in the United States, as a Western society, we have the sickest pediatric population in the Western world. We have the highest infant mortality rate in the Western world. And those numbers just continue to go up, right? And there's just a linear correlation with vaccines. And so I made a complete transition, into just doing what I now call intelligent design medicine. The basic philosophy, right, it's very, very simple, is that anything that intelligent design says is supposed to be there and is not there, we put it back. Anything that intelligent design says is not supposed to be there and it is there, you take it out.
Hey friends, thanks so very much for tuning in. I have a very important interview for you. It could be a life-changing interview for many of you. I have on the line Dr. Roby Mitchell. You may know him as Dr. Fitt. The website is drfitt.com. And I was made aware of Dr. Mitchell by my friend Carrie Rivera when she came on, and we talked about potential cures for autism and Asperger's. We discussed chlorine dioxide, and she said, you have to talk to Dr. Roby Mitchell. And so I listened to an interview between Carrie and Dr. Mitchell. And doctor, you said something really powerful that I really loved. You said, you'll never medicate your way out of conditions you behave your way into. You talk about intelligent design, you talk about natural cures, and so much more. Welcome, Dr. Mitchell.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Hey, give us a little bit about your background. One of the things that I find fascinating about you is you're not just a homeopath, you're an actual medical doctor. You used to prescribe medication. You got real sick and tired of that. And then you started to give your patients the opportunity to either have prescription medication or knowledge to do what you've done. You cured yourself of prostate cancer. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your methodology and your ideology.
So when I was in medical school, right, that first year, the professor, the head of the physiology department, took a liking to me. He was, as Dr. Peter Pang, P-A-N-G, world-renowned researcher in high blood pressure. I stood out to him, for some reason, and he took a liking to me. And he was starting the PhD portion of the MD PhD program there at Texas Tech University, where I was in medical school. And I've, been a nerd all my life. I used to sleep with the Encyclopedia Britannica. And so that really appealed to me. And, the only caveat was that I would have to take a year out of the MD curriculum, right? And then do a year of research in his lab. So I took him up on that offer. And then once I got affiliated with him, he asked that they were also starting a student exchange program between Texas Tech University School of Medicine and Jinan University School of Medicine, which is on mainland China. Now, this was back in the mid 80s, when all of this stuff that I'm into now, was really considered voodoo, as well as acupuncture, and Chinese traditional medicine. But in the Marines, I had been a martial arts instructor, and one of my dreams was always to meet Bruce Lee, or go over to China, and get some information on Bruce Lee. So I took him up on that offer for that reason. I had no interest in alternative medicine at the time. But I went over there and studied for 4 months, and first got there very skeptical, but they had two wings of the medical school. They had a Western medicine, a side that practiced Western medicine, and then a side that practiced Chinese traditional medicine using the herbs and acupuncture. And over on the Western side, they had all the biometrics, that I'm used to using, that would show before and after results to really nail down whether something positive happened or not. And so I would see patients, come over and get the diagnosis on the Western side, go over to the Eastern medicine side, get cured, and come back over to the Western side and have it documented. And I saw that enough times to really know that, this is not just placebo or mind over matter. Something is happening here. And so for 4 months, I was able to watch acupuncture actually cure things, right? These herbal medicines actually cure things. And I started to kind of buy into this philosophy that there's an innate healing power in the body that these people have found a way to tap into. And one of the last things I saw there before leaving was a guy have a cholecystectomy, which is removal of the gallbladder. He had that done while he was awake with only acupuncture as anesthesia. This guy was talking back and forth to the doctor that was taking out his gallbladder, right? With
Wow.
only acupuncture as the anesthesia. And that just really put the nail on things as far as me really knowing that this stuff is not placebo or mind over matter. They know something. So, but anyway, I finished that 4 months, came back, and got rematriculated, and re-indoctrinated into the Western model of thinking. And then I finished up and went into ER practice. Well, when we finished medical school and get into a job and start earning lots of money, we get focused on, earning the money, and, the drug companies, are bringing the food, and we don't exercise as much as we should. And so gradually I developed high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and type 2 diabetes. I was 35 years old. So I was 35 years old, and I had what we call metabolic syndrome, which is this trilogy of high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and high blood sugar, diabetes. That metabolic syndrome is a huge risk factor for cardiovascular disease, stroke, and heart attacks. And I knew this. I was 35. I had a 37-year-old come in with a heart attack. And so that kind of got my attention. And because I had just been kind of cruising along, as you do at that, when you're at that young age, right, thinking that you're bulletproof and not paying attention to things. So that guy coming in with a heart attack made me realize, that I need to start doing something about these things. And so my first implementation was, what doctors do when they have medical conditions. We don't go to the doctor, right? We go to the lunch table with other doctors and just ask them what to do. And so I asked one of the cardiologists, I told him, my blood pressure is high. What should I take? And he directed me to take a drug called propranolol, which is what we call a beta blocker. And beta blockers, one thing they do is they slow down your heart. But the other thing that they do is they interfere with thyroid hormone, the function of thyroid hormone. I had undiagnosed hypothyroidism, right, which is a very common thing here. And so when I took that drug, it gave me just about every side effect listed on the package insert. And so I said, this is not for me. And that triggered my thought pattern back to what the Chinese had talked about, about this innate ability for the body to heal itself. So I started to wonder, if maybe the double meat Whataburgers with cheese and the chocolate shake and the large fries, could really be having anything to do with these symptoms, of high blood sugar, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. So the first thing I did was clean up my diet and started, following this, what has eventually evolved into what we call the Bali eating plan. And that's an acronym for basic antifungal low insulin. So basically foods that are on the Okinawan diet, or the Mediterranean, these diets, what we learned that there are these pockets of cultures across the world, they're called blue zones, where people live to 100 on a regular basis, and they don't get cancer and diabetes and all that stuff. So what epidemiologists went through trying to do a line item on, well, what are the common denominators that these people do that allows them to live healthily for so long? And one of the things was their pattern of eating. So what I did in the laboratory was try to find out why this particular pattern of eating conferred health, because we'd looked at all these vitamins and minerals and amino acids and so forth, right, in Western medicine, tried to parse out a magic bullet, right, a silver bullet that was conferring health. And all of the literature, it tended to be equivocal, right? So one study would say that, vitamin C was good for you. Another study, would say, well, we don't know. One study would say that beta carotene prevented this or that. And then there was another study that said that it caused cancer in people that smoked. So that part of the literature, was very equivocal. What was not equivocal was that if people ate a diet very high in certain fruits and vegetables, then they got these health benefits. So I had been working a lot with people that once I started into this alternative, or what's called alternative, I say there's no alternative to good medicine, but once I started into this way of looking at reversing disease, I discovered that a lot of people had this what's called candida overgrowth, right, or yeast overgrowth. And candida is it's an organism that normally lives in our colons, and it has it has a good effect there. So they have a job to do there. They're what we call a commensal, right? So they help us, and we help them. So we help them by our digested food going through till it becomes waste matter in the large colon, and we feed the candida that way. They take that refuse, very similar to vultures or other recyclers, fungus and so forth, that are in the environment. They're recyclers. So candida is a recycler. So it takes that waste material that makes it down to the colon, breaks it down, frees up some nutrients, and there's a reclamation process that's there in the colon. It's called the vena cava. It's these systems of veins that go up from the colon and they converge into one big vein called the portal vein, and that transfer those nutrients right back up to the to the liver, right? So we can take advantage of them. So, but if thyroid levels go down, if you're not producing enough hydrochloric acid, then those candida that are normally single cell and sessile, right, immobile, they will coalesce to form a big unit that's called a hyphae, and then they become mobile. And they can take that same highway right up the portal vein and get into the liver and cause problems, or get into the skin, or they can go anywhere in their body. And once they get into the bloodstream, then your immune system can react to that with the production of their weapons of mass destruction that are called cytokines. And it's actually the production of these cytokines that are the foundation of most Western disease. So from cataracts to autism to cardiovascular disease to autoimmune conditions to asthma, all of those are underwritten by inflammation, or the production of cytokines by the immune system. So it stands to reason, if we get that back under control, right? So if we kind of cap the well on that candida overgrowth and get them back down in the colon where they belong, then we stop the production of those cytokines and we get well, right? So that's what happened with my diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol, right? So high cholesterol is simply a liver response to inflammation in the liver, right? Candida overgrowth in the liver. The cataracts are an inflammatory response. Age-related macular degeneration, same thing. Alzheimer's, same thing. Over and over and over in the medical literature, we see that there's this common denominator of inflammation. So the simplicity of reversing these things is kind of mind-blowing, particularly, to somebody trained in linear Western medical thinking. But it really is as simple as changing your diet and replacing a few things that, what I say intelligent design says is supposed to be there. And when I say intelligent design, I'm not requiring anybody to believe in a deity or anything. But what I'm saying is that there is an intelligent design to the body, however it came about, right? It's pretty remarkable. It's mind-boggling, the complexity of this human body that we have, the physiology, that heals itself and has this autonomous homeostasis. It's just really mind-boggling. So it is an intelligent design. And so I approach things like a car mechanic. So this, an intelligently designed automobile. I have one from Germany. And it could be that somewhere over in Germany, there was an explosion, and then all these mechanical parts came together and it turned into a BMW i8. It could be also that, some very smart people put it together. Regardless, it's a very fascinating machine, right? And I can keep it running if I do some simple things, with gas and oil and tire pressure and that type of thing. So when I look at disease, whether it's, and I'm kind of a one-trick pony when it comes to my approach to disease, and this intelligent design models has two basic tenets. One is that if the intelligent design mandates something that's supposed to be there and it's not there, put it back, right? If thyroid is low, put thyroid levels back. If vitamin D is missing, right, vitamin A, so on. You make sure that all the parts that are supposed to be there are there. The second thing is that if there's something that intelligent design didn't mean to be there, is there, remove it, right? So If you got heavy metals, right, you want to get those out. Those are not intelligent design things. If you got an overgrowth of strep, right, you want to get rid of that. If you have an overgrowth of candida, you want to get rid of that. If you do those two basic things, right, and then just step back, it's like planting tomatoes, right, and then putting water and fertilizer, right? The DNA is there so that a tomato comes out, right? You don't have to micromanage it.
Let me do this. You've thrown a lot at us, and I want to get to a lot of different places in this call. So guys, stay tuned. We will give you some of the methods that you may be able to immediately begin to improve your own health. And we'll ask Dr. Roby Mitchell about the miracle of black seed oil and some other things. But before we do that, let's just talk big picture here in Western medicine. I firmly believe that the JP Morgan Rockefeller cartel destroyed the electricity that we could have had with Tesla's inventions. They captured it. They hid it in a closet. I think they did the same thing with Western medicine. And I want your thoughts on that, because I was watching a documentary on HBO the other day about the art world. And the name of the documentary is The Price of Everything. And this art dealer said something pretty profound. She said there's three kinds of people in the world: those who can see, those who are shown and then can see, and those who can never see. Why do you suppose we see so many doctors in the Western world unable to see the benefits of the type of medicine you're practicing, and all they're willing to do is prescribe medicine? I'm really incensed about it too, because I'm incensed that Merck continues to be allowed to sell Gardasil, which continues to maim, cripple, and in some cases kill girls and boys, while Dr. Boyd Haley has been persecuted by the FDA and the CDC for trying to cure autism with some natural remedies. Your thoughts? Why are so many doctors in the West, well, I think you used the word, indoctrinated?
Yes, yeah, I did use that word, indoctrinated. And there's a book called True Believers, right, that explains a lot of this. And in that book, True Believers, right, it's about the cult phenomena, and how very intelligent people, people with PhDs, fall under the control of people like Jim Jones, that cult that was in Japan, right, where the people thought that they were going to go catch the Hale-Bopp comet, and other cults, right? There is some common denominators that are used, some mind control common denominators that are used to obtain this type of mind control. And that book, True Believers, it does a line item on those. And when you go through that line item, right, is the medical school falls under a cult, right? So, one thing is you have this esoteric language, right, which we're taught in medical school those first 2 years, right? We learn how to talk like a doctor. Another thing is there is some kind of deified entity that's always in front of you, right? They have, a particular garb that they put on, right? It may be a big hat or a robe or whatever. Like, because in medical school, it's the white coat and the stethoscope and so forth. Something that gives you the idea that this person is an authority figure that I should listen to. Another thing is separating people from family and friends, right? And that definitely happens when you're in medical school. You have to, we would have to read 300 pages a night. And so there's no way that, you're going out and partying with friends, and talking to family and so forth when you've got that much of a caseload. And then another thing was being put through a very arduous regimen, in order to gain entrance into the cult, right? And so that is one of the. So we are literally indoctrinated to a way of thinking when you go through that period of medical school. And then the longer you go through medical school, so if you go and do a specialty like I did, or if you do a fellowship in cardiology, right, or if you become a surgeon, right, then you're indoctrinated even more. Now, the other allegory that explains this is the story about the friend going to visit another friend, and he finds that friend inside looking for something that he had lost, right? And so he asked the friend, well, when was the last time you saw it? He said, well, I was outside when I lost it. And he says, well, why aren't you looking outside? He said, well, the light is better in here, right? So and that explains it. It's what we call the golden handcuffs in medicine. You know, you get into medicine and you start making so much money, you start getting so many accolades, you know, community accolades, social accolades, and so forth, that is also very addictive. So those are the two basic reasons, you know, why physicians can't see what's hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there with the golden handcuffs. And I want to just share a little story about that. There's a doctor in my neighborhood. I've played poker with him. He's a good guy. But every single time, I hear these stories time and time again from neighbors, they'll bring their young daughters in to see him, and he will push that Gardasil vaccine from Merck on them every single time. And these aren't sexually active girls. And we all know that's a very optional vaccine. And it's a very damaging vaccine. And I happen to know the way those 3 shots are set up. They're given the girls are given 3 separate shots over time. The doctor gets a kickback. And the reason I share that story with you is because I know you broke your conditioning. You're not a greedy person who wanted to continue prescribing medication when you found that there are better ways to heal people. And you discovered you could make a living as a doctor, not prescribing medication. And I think that's so powerful that you took the leap, you made the leap, but you also discovered that the information you're sharing is information people are very hungry for. People want to have options. They don't want to always have to go to the doctor and take a pill or get a shot. There are better ways to do it. And I love the fact that you found a way to make a living doing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that didn't happen initially, right? So, you know, I went from once it was a transition. So the first thing I did, right, when I found out that I could fix my high cholesterol, diabetes, and high blood pressure was to give people both options, right? I would say that, you know, I've got my prescription pad here. You know, I can write you a prescription, right, for a drug to bring down your high blood pressure. But let me tell you what I did. And then I would let them make the decision. Pretty soon ethically and morally, that started not to feel good. And so I made a complete transition, you know, into just doing what I now call intelligent design medicine. So I went from making, you know, $250,000 a year as an ER physician to making only $16,000 a year doing this. But I could sleep well at night. Now, I became good enough at it that now, you know, I do well financially, and I show other doctors how to do that. But it was definitely a transition.
Yeah, well, good on you for making that transition, because I think if more people were intellectually honest, more doctors were intellectually honest, we might see better levels of health in the United States. And again, that doctor that I know, he is accountable on becoming informed. It's not hard to understand what's going on with that Gardasil vaccine. Just go to YouTube and type in Gardasil damaged daughter. You will see countless videos or testimonies from mothers who have lost their daughters after getting that vaccine. And again, I'm just incensed by Western medicine, and I'm glad that people have alternatives because of doctors like you. So let's talk about some of the things people can do. First of all, how do you know if you have candida overgrowth? I guess you might know that by some of the symptoms and some of the illnesses you're suffering from.
Yes. So the symptomatology, there's not a good blood test, or any other kind of test for candida. So you go by the symptomatology, and there are, you know, several websites, you know, on my drfittinfo.com, right? There is a line item of symptoms that you can look at and assess yourself. There are other websites. If you just type in symptoms of candida overgrowth, right, you'll come across the symptomatology. And one of which is hypothyroidism, right? Being low thyroid, having all the symptoms of low thyroid. And so one of the ways to assess yourself on a blood test is to look at what's called the TSH. That stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. So the TSH is it's not thyroid hormone. It's kind of the thermostat for thyroid hormone, such that if thyroid levels go down, your TSH goes up. If your TSH is above 1.0, and you have symptoms, then you're hypothyroid. Now, your doctor will let that TSH get up to 4 or higher, right, before they will give you, before they will consider thyroid hormone replacement. So there's so many people walking around that are hypothyroid and don't know it. The other thing that you can assess on a blood test is your MCV. That stands for mean corpuscular volume. That tells us how big your red blood cells are. Now, to be effective in what they do at taking oxygen and iron to all the rest of your cells, is they have to be kind of like the Goldilocks porridge. They got to be just right. There's a small window of size that these red blood cells have to be in for them to be effective. They can't be too small and they can't be too large. Now, if they're not getting enough iron, then they get too small. If they're not getting enough B12, then they get too large. And there's a rheostatic increase in the size of red blood cells as you decrease absorption of B12. What causes that decrease in absorption of B12 is a decrease in your ability to produce hydrochloric acid. Vitamins, minerals, amino acids, they have to be ionized, right, in order to go across the gut into the bloodstream. They have to have a charge to them, an electric charge, so that's ionization. Hydrochloric acid gives them that charge. If they don't have that charge, right, then you don't absorb those nutrients very well. As B12 levels goes down because of that inadequate production of hydrochloric acid, then that MCV gradually starts to get bigger, 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 and bigger. If your MCV is above 90, then that suggests that you're not producing enough hydrochloric acid. So those three things, right? Check the symptoms of candida overgrowth, check your TSH to make sure that it's not above 1.0, and then check your MCV to make sure that it's not above 90.
All right. Well, you know what? You're obviously a doctor. I'm not a dumb guy, but I find some of that a little hard to follow. I would need to get a doctor that I trust as much as you that could help me do the blood test and get those things looked at. But for those who want to take the step to figure out if they do potentially have candida overgrowth, what can they do to bring that back in line? And what are some of the supplements? What are some of the things people can take today to immediately positively affect their health? I know that you and Carrie Rivera talked about the miracle of black seed oil. You sell that on your website. I'm probably going to buy some because I know you both swear by it. But tell us some of the things people can do today to improve their health.
So again, the basic philosophy, right, and it's very, very simple, is that anything that intelligent design says is supposed to be there and is not there, we put it back. Anything that intelligent design says is not supposed to be there and it is there, you take it out. So one of the things that the black seed oil, it comes from this plant, Nigella sativa, and plants for millennia, they have been in this environment of fungus that wants to eat them for dinner, right? 24/7, 365. So they have had to develop mechanisms to ward off fungal invasion. They may do that by growing bark or shell or hull or peel or husk, or they may do it by producing chemicals, right? A wide array of different chemicals that attack fungus, viruses, bacteria in different ways, right? So that the critters can't become resistant. Some of these plants are literally at the top of the food chain as having this orchestra of chemicals that kill fungus. And Nigella sativa is one of those. The cannabis plant is another one. So for centuries, right, the people in the Middle East have been using black seed oil as a medicine because it cures so many things. And it cures so many things because, again, it has this broad spectrum ability to kill viruses, bacteria, and fungi. So it keeps your critter levels down. When that happens, then your immune system is not producing those cytokines, or you get rid of inflammation, which is the foundation of most Western disease. The other thing that, so that's, we're removing stuff that's not supposed to be there in the intelligent design model, right, with these orchestra of chemicals that are in black seed oil. The other thing is, again, we want to put things back that are supposed to be there. So the vitamins, minerals, and the amino acids that are in black seed oil serve that purpose. There are these what are called carotenoids that are in black seed oil, that your body takes those and converts them into different forms of vitamin A. Now, and that's important because that we get different types of carotenoids because there's what we call glycochemistry. So all your cell membranes have these sugar-based receptors on the cell membranes, and that's where different things dock. So this is why you'll get strep throat, but you don't get strep in your urine. You have E. coli in your urine, but you don't have E. coli in your throat, and that's because different bacteria they use this glycochemistry to attach to different types of tissue. So these carotenoids do the same thing. So you want to have carotenoids, that attach to your eyes. You want the ones that attach to the breast, like lycopene and prostate. Wide variety of those. So black seed oil checks both boxes as far as intelligent design. And then again, so the things like the hypothyroid, you can find that out on the blood test. The hydrochloric acid, you can find that out on the blood test. If you implement those three things, right, you're going to go a long way as far as reversing any condition that's underwritten by inflammation. And then you want to look at things, like your vitamin D level. You want to put back in iodine, which is the halogen, right, that acts like the chlorine in your swimming pool. Eat the Bally eating plan, right, that gives you all of these nutrients, right, that we're supposed to have. There is what I call the Passover protocol that people can look up. You can just Google Passover protocol, and you'll come up with this line item, that I normally tell people to instill before the cold flu season, right, to keep from getting cold and flu. But if you implement that program, right, it's going to, protect you 365 days of the year, right? So that's the other thing that I would add in there.
Okay. And that Passover protocol, is that something we can learn about on your website?
It's on the Dr. Fitt info site, right? So there's a commercial site that's drfitt.com, but then there's an academic site that is drfittinfo.com. That is just didactic information educating you on how to heal yourself.
Okay. Well, look, guys, I'm not an expert in the area of homeopathy or natural cures or anything of that nature, but it's a subject I'm very interested in. And I loved talking to Carrie Rivera about chlorine dioxide because, Doc, I have a couple of sons who we believe are vaccine damaged. One has severe ADHD. The other one has mild Asperger's. And, I believe that doctors, these Western medicine doctors, are complicit in the damaging of our children and the damaging of our health. You noted that you were on beta blockers and you had all of these side effects. I was listening to a Joe Rogan interview not too long ago. I forget who his guest was, but his guest said something very smart, I thought. He said, they're not side effects, they're effects. There are negative effects to a lot of these medications. I also believe there are very negative effects to many of these vaccines. What are your thoughts on the complicity of doctors in Western medicine actually making us more unhealthy because they're not willing to do the research and look at the alternatives that you've looked into?
I say probably the most pejorative term that I have come up with, in describing this is pedophiles, right? And so a pedophile, and that's a neologism, right, a word that I made up, is a pediatrician that financially benefits from giving vaccines, right? And so doctors, they are suborning this process of, what I call FDA abortion of children, right? Because as in the United States, as a Western society, we have the sickest pediatric population in the Western world. We have the highest infant mortality rate in the Western world, and those numbers just continue to go up, right? And there's just a linear correlation with vaccines. And, just the vaccines just check all the boxes. They damage the immune system. They expose children to heavy metals like mercury and aluminum. I'm just finding out today, from the work that Carrie Rivera is doing with MIT professor, Dr. Seneff, that there's this glyphosate, right? This Roundup pesticide, right, is contained in vaccines.
That's right.
So there has to be a correlation there.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then. For those who are listening who have vaccine damaged children, what are some of the protocols you might recommend, or even what you might call quote unquote cures? I use that word loosely, FDA, if you're listening. What are some of the treatments, potential treatments parents might be able to implement to help children, their own children that may be vaccine damaged?
So the basic thing to understand is, again, right, that same common denominator, inflammation is at work. And we know this because of what's called brain imaging or brain scans. So it's called a SPECT, SPECT scan. And what those have shown is that in the common denominator for the autism spectrum, right, whether it's Asperger's or autism or ADHD or whatever, is that there is inflammation in the brain. And so our first target is inflammation. So a primary primary thing to implement there is the diet, right? And that's one of the first things that Carrie does with these children that have autism, is change the way they eat to not put in foods that quickly turn to sugar, right? That will feed the organisms that are causing the immune system to respond. So that's the first thing, is diet. And then she implements some other things. And the reason that she and I got in contact with, I read some pejorative articles about her, treating these children, with chlorine dioxide. And so that's how I knew that she was onto something, because all the attacks were ad hominem, none attacking the science, right? They were all just, calling her names. And I knew that, and I know that anytime that's happening, in conventional medicine, is because somebody has come on to something. That's what happened with cannabis, right? I mean, that used to be a prescription that doctors would write, right, for cannabis. The problem was it worked too well. It was taking a lot of drugs, competing with a lot of drugs. So there was this big conspiracy, to make it seem really bad. We were fortunately getting over that now. The truth is coming to light. But anyway, I tracked her down and found out about her using the chlorine dioxide, which I had been exposed to when I was the associate director at the Tahoma Clinic up in Washington with Dr. Jonathan Wright. I came to know about CD. It was called MMS, as a treatment for candida, and it worked very well. The other thing about the chlorine dioxide is that it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And so this inflammation that's associated with autism, the reason that there are this litany of symptoms that allows for the diagnosis of autism, right, is the same in each child, is because where the inflammation is in autism is in one specific place, is in the amygdala portion of the brain. And that's why there are these concrete symptoms, right, that go along with the diagnosis of autism. If we can get something that crosses the blood-brain barrier, right, and kills off that infection in the amygdala, then the immune system stops with the inflammation and they reverse back to normal. And that's what we have with chlorine dioxide. Now, there's one other chemical that does that, and it's called ketamine. If you've heard in the recent reports about ketamine being used for depression, I mean, bringing people out of depression in one day.
Yes.
People that have had depression for
Yes, I've
20
heard Joe
years,
Rogan talk
that
about
has been,
this.
yeah, has been refractory to any medication, right, for 20 years. They do one round of IV ketamine and their depression is cured. Now, they don't understand the mechanism of action, right? The people that are using it, they talk about glutamine receptors and so forth. That's not what happens. What happens is that, and you can look this up, ketamine kills fungus, right? And so that's what is happening. They're just basically disinfecting the brain with the ketamine. So that will be a higher level of treatment, and we're going to start doing that actually here in Amarillo, Texas. There's a doctor here. He's an anesthesiologist, a pain treatment specialist that, uses ketamine all the time, in the treatment of pain. But he has agreed to start doing these ketamine IVs for, whatever indication, certainly for depression. But we're going to be trying it for autism and Alzheimer's and several other, anything that we know that is a result of inflammation in the brain.
Excellent. That's just excellent. I really appreciate that. So guys, it's number one, diet, avoid sugar that feeds the critters. Number two, chlorine dioxide, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And number three, potentially this ketamine treatment. Doc, how do people get a hold of you? You've got my interest piqued. Maybe my son and I should fly down there and visit with you and you could help us with the ketamine treatment. How would people get a hold of you? You're probably so busy, but for those listening who find themselves in a very precarious situation and want immediate help, do you take new patients? Can people work with you directly?
I don't, but I have several other people that I've trained that do. So there's a nurse practitioner, there are several chiropractors. Again, this other doctor that is the pain specialist. He will do the ketamine. I'm also training him to work with his class 4 laser to treat any kind of nerve or joint pain, right? Make cartilage grow back. But we're doing some really innovative stuff. But people can follow me on Facebook. They can follow the Dr. Fitt Facebook page. They can also go to the drfittinfo.com, right? And look up their particular condition. They can plug in Dr. Fitt / whatever their condition is into the search bar on Google, right? And they'll come up with my disposition on just about everything, right? Because I've been doing this for so long. All that information is out there in the ethers, and it's available for free. They can private message me there on Facebook also, through the Dr. Fitt site. I can't accept anymore. For some reason, Facebook caps you at 5,000 friends on your personal page, right? And I have 5,000. You're on the 1,000 waiting list, and so that's not an option for most people. But the Dr. Fitt site, they can access me through.
Okay, excellent. And before we part ways here, again, I'm on your website here, drfitt.com. I am going to buy some of the black seed oil today. Why not? I mean, you swear by it, so does Kerry Rivera. Why don't you tell us about this Robinzyme? Am I saying that right? What does that do?
It's Robinzyme, right? So kind of a play on my name with the enzyme. But the Robinzyme, it replaces the hydrochloric acid. So if you test that, get a blood test, and you test that MCV, and it's above 90, or if you Google symptoms of hydrochloric acid deficiency and you check a lot of those boxes, right, then Robinzyme is what you want to start taking each meal. That replaces the hydrochloric acid, and it also replaces these pancreatic enzymes that digest your fat, protein, and carbohydrates. It also replaces these B vitamins, right, that your body has been missing, right, because they haven't been ionized by hydrochloric acid. So it is really, really powerful stuff. That combination, the Robinzyme and the black seed oil, that is a 1-2 punch, it has a really powerful effect at healing because it brings down that level of candida and gets rid of inflammation.
Okay, so for a guy like me who hasn't had his blood test done to know if I have overgrowth of candida, could I order the Robinzyme and just start taking that as well, just blindly?
Yes. So you would take it every meal, either just before your meal, during the meal, or just immediately after your meal. And it makes sure that, all of your proteins are broken down into individual amino acids. 2, it makes sure that your vitamins, minerals, and amino acids gets ionized so that they are absorbed. 3, it does a scorched earth kill of viruses, bacteria, and fungi.
Excellent. So that would be good for probably kids with autism or Asperger's as well.
Oh, definitely. That is one of the foundational things that allows those critters to grow in the brain, is those kids are born not producing adequate hydrochloric acid.
All right. You said one other thing that I really liked a lot in your interview with Kerry Rivera. I took a lot of notes in that one. You said, you don't have to live with anything you weren't born with. Folks, you can change your health today by changing your behaviors. There's a lot of good things you can do that don't require medical intervention from Western medicine doctors. I think you should probably check out drfitt.com. And what was the other site? Was it drfittinfo.com?
drfittinfo.com, right. And that's what I call Dr. Fitt University.
Well, very good. Guys, I really have enjoyed this conversation. I hope you have too. There's so much we can do to help ourselves and help our families that, again, don't require Western medicine. They just really require critical thinking and research. Our guest has been Dr. Roby Mitchell, better known as Dr. Fitt. Thanks so much.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all your time, and thank you for what you're doing. And guys, thank you so much for your support. If this information resonated with you, please do share it within your sphere of influence on social media. Together, we can all make a change for the good, a change for the better. And thank you so much for your support at sgtreport.com for real news 24/7. God bless. Bye-bye.
Our freedoms with regards to our health are being taken away. And what's happening in California, where it's mandatory vaccinations, for example. I mean, you're free to have an abortion, but you're not free to not vaccinate your child. So at what point does the government stop stepping in on how we want to heal our bodies?